PanTech Chronicles, Book 2, Insurrection, written by F. Lockhaven and M. A. Owens. Chapter 7.
That's short-sighted,
I said, taking a sip of my drink.
You're the head of your own research division. You work harder than anyone I've met here.
This was true, even if I mistook his motivations. In the end, it probably didn't matter. PanTech would use whatever breakthroughs made to either enrich the lives of those here or hurt those in the adversity zones. It's not like that would ever change. No, I needed to stop thinking that way. Or else why did I even come here? Frelia had taken a liking to me. She's a commander and a military scientist. Commanders work directly beneath the general. Barth was the head of animal research. What if I could take his place someday? I could sabotage harmful research or discourage the military from using it. Maybe Frelia could have her part to play in that. I remembered the teachings of my mother. Stop being so stubborn and callous. Use charm. Manipulate your enemies into defeating themselves.
Yes, well, at least someone around here noticed. And you've been here, what, a mere handful of months? We've placed human and military research on such a pedestal that we've forgotten that we make up only a fraction of living things on this planet. With human population absent in so many large parts of the world now, new species of plants and animals are emerging at an alarming rate. What could we learn by studying them? It was my research, using the same process antlered mammals use to regrow their horns quickly, that we have to thank for broken bones being mended in days. What a historic accomplishment this was, to have one injection heal a broken bone. But do you think I got a visit from the president? An award? A medal? A structure renamed in my honor? Ha! If you guessed nothing, you'd be correct.
This strategy was the correct one. Give a big talking ego like Barth the tiniest prompt, and he could talk about himself for days. I set my glass down on the desk, hard, raising an eyebrow.
That's amazing. If something like that wasn't enough to get the president's attention, what were the other divisions creating?
He shook his head, standing and facing toward the wall behind him.
That's the most insulting part of that entire event. That same week, General Marcus, along with other top scientists in the military division, unveiled the newly designed power suits. Unlike the previous version, the new one was, well, I'm sure you've seen them. The fluid inside would enable the soldiers to be comfortable in any environment, and it contained available treatments for wounds and ailments of all sorts. They were also more powerful. Not that it was necessary, considering half of the apes in these adversity zones have barely advanced beyond hurling stones or firing arrows from longbows. Perhaps you can guess what happened next.
Apes, huh? Barth really wears his heart on his sleeve. He doesn't even see most of the population as human. They're lesser creatures to him. Apes. Disposable. My blood boiled, and I struggled to keep my cool. Yet, that's what I had to do. I knew this meeting was a rare opportunity, and I had to seize it. I had to do everything right. No mistakes. I shook my head, taking another sip of my drink.
I suppose everyone was so enamored by the military advancements that they didn't even notice something as groundbreaking as your invention.
Barth laughed, placing his hand on his forehead before turning back around to face me, smiling widely.
Oh, if only that were the case, Taylor. Far worse than that. They considered my research the ideal supplement, accessory even, to the military's new technology. After all, it was so easy to add my technology to the fluid of the suits. Now soldiers in the mostly imaginary scenarios where they might have their bones broken would receive immediate treatment that would have them back in the fight in no time. You could ask yourself what fight that may be. Well, that would be a fair question. The truth of the matter is, as you could likely guess, that there is no war and hasn't been a war in ages. The last rebellion was squashed so decisively that another one is all but impossible.
Yet the president fears it anyway and gives all his personal attention to the military's waste of resources and personnel,
I said, punctuating the statement with a deep sigh. He sat back down in his chair, downing the rest of his drink in one swift movement. His skin was flushed from his tirade, but he seemed to be calming down.
It feels good to sit down and talk to someone who sees things for what they are. It's a rare event indeed. I hope you don't give in to laziness, just as most others do when they transfer to PanTech.
This was it. This was the opening I'd been waiting for.
Actually, I'd like to be more involved. Since you were so honest with me, I'll be just as honest with you. I was a veterinarian in my adversity zone. It was a thankless job, but it was something I really cared about. There were a lot of distractions in my zone leading up to my testing, and I hope you won't be upset by my saying this, but I was hoping to become more involved in this important breakthrough research I heard so much about. I've done so much studying since I've arrived. You can see how much I've learned in just a few months. I've met people who have been here for years that are behind me already. You and I are different, but in a way, I think we'll complement each other well. I hate the attention that comes with major discoveries, and I only care about the work itself. I would be more than happy to give you the credit for anything I find or help with. All of it. One commander has taken a liking to me, and I can go on expeditions with her to bring back samples from any species you think we should study.
He nodded slowly, looking down at his desk. None of this had really been a lie, after all. Only our end goals were different. He wanted to be a shining example of PanTech, with a statue of himself erected in the president's office. Me? I wanted to see the whole thing collapsed in on itself. PanTech could become its own adversity zone, no longer above the many they looked down upon. They could taste the adversity they'd so long forgotten, and see if it still seemed worth it to them.
Yes, I think I'm inclined to agree with you. That arrangement would be suitable. So much work needs to be done in the field, perhaps even in cooperation with other divisions. I prefer the deeper scientific work done in the lab, but if you were serious about the rest,
I nodded.
More field work and working with other divisions sounds like it would be great for the reputation of the College of Animal Studies. It would give me a chance to get away from this stuffy campus from time to time and talk you and our division up to the others.
He tapped his finger on his desk, followed by more nodding.
yes, I think this will work out well for me. And you, of course.
I finished my drink with a quick gulp, hoping to wrap up this meeting soon. I was exhausted and still felt as though I'd fallen off a cliff and landed in a nice pile of rocks below. The discomfort was reaching a point where it was difficult to mask.
Then I'll leave you to the planning. If you could make me a list of animals and the zones they live in, and the divisions and contacts you'd like me to speak to, I can get started as soon as you'd like me to.
I stood and turned toward the door.
Wait, please, sit for a moment longer if you have the time.
I nodded, complying with his request. Had I given something away? No. Come to think of it, this was way too easy from the start. Now would come the punchline.
You are probably wondering why it was so easy for a new arrival like yourself to walk right in here and secure such a vital role in my division after only one, albeit productive, one-on-one meeting. Would you care to guess the reason?
Oh no, I should have guessed the reason already. Play dumb. Cross your fingers and hope you're wrong. I'm such an idiot for not considering this from the start. I should have waited, found a better opening. Taylor, you should have never underestimated this guy. You've walked right into his trap, and all the while, he let you think you were setting one for him.
Because I actually care about animal research, and most of the people who come in here just want the same thing you do. They're competition.
I said with noticeable strain, the lie clear as day as it left my lips. He grinned and let the hint of a laugh slip.
Not untrue, certainly. That is a consideration. However, there is one species I've been dying to study for quite some time. Since I first arrived, the mystique behind it intrigued me. Reliable sightings had been documented, but those records were nearly 1,000 years old. No hard evidence existed. The scientists who described their sightings predated PanTech itself, and their peers laughed them out of the room when they presented it. Anything in the last 500 years was only anecdotal and only spread through word of mouth by your primitive sand people. No offense to the present company, of course.
My jaw clenched, but I could feel his eyes focusing on my face, looking for any sign of irritation. I was clearly on the defensive now. I had been from the start. With great difficulty, I relaxed. On the outside, at least.
None taken. I have to accept that they aren't my people anymore, just like you don't belong to yours anymore.
Very true. But back to the far more important matter at hand. I believe there's no need to make myself clearer unless you intend to continue playing coy. I could spell it out for you, but what's the point?
Of course. How could I have walked into this room and not seen this outcome from the very start? I'm such a fool. I should be ashamed by how overconfident I allowed myself to become. Even with this enhancement, Professor Barth was much older, far more experienced, and a genius. I was new to this way of thinking, using others as pawns for your own goals. Barth had likely perfected it.
No, I'll not pretend any longer. You're talking about the Shadow Falcon, but even more important than that, you're talking about Ghost.
He narrowed his eyes.
Ghost? You named the creature? Is it your pet?
Companion,
I corrected.
please take that into consideration when you make your request. I'm under no obligation to give him to you. No more than I would be to take your cabinet over there. I'm familiar with the rules.
I'd expect no less from you. Of course, if I had the means, I would already have seized the Shadow Falcon at the moment of your arrival. I need your permission to study it.
Him. And the answer is no.
He leaned back in his chair, his face growing flush despite his effort to conceal his irritation, taken aback by my refusal.
No?
That's right.
I confirmed.
No.
He scratched his chin and sat quietly for a moment, before the confident smile returned to his lips.
Allow me to make a point and then to offer a concession. The military, as you know, may seize anything for its use. I don't need to tell you what the creature, Ghost's neurotoxin would mean to the military should they discover its existence. Under my care, I could protect him. We could protect him. I have no interest in his toxin at the moment. I'm more interested in the bird's rumored intelligence. It's more relevant to our current project. Or, should I say, your project. I would ask only to influence your study of Ghost, merely to make suggestions based on my knowledge. What would you say to that? You could call it my last offer.
I could call it that, and should, because that's what it was. Even though it wasn't direct, his comment about the military was clearly a threat. I'd messed up, badly. I felt like such an idiot. I walked right into it. But if the neurotoxin would be such a prize to the military, then why hadn't they seized him already? Freya knew about it. That could only mean she hadn't told them. But why? One question at a time.
Professor, we have a deal.
At least it was over, for now, and I could finally get some sleep. Chapter 8. The warm sun beamed down, directly into my senses, like the kind words of a friend. It made me feel energetic, yet too lazy to move. Lying in the scorching sands of my homeland, I felt truly at ease.
Taylor?
A gentle voice called out to me. One I recognized. I couldn't answer, didn't want to. For once, I knew I was in a dream and had no desire to rush it along.
Taylor?
She called again. Mother. A woman I'd spent my entire life despising, often hating, with a fiery passion. Now, several months away from home, I wanted to see her more than anyone. I tightened my eyelids shut, fearing what I might see.
It's all right. Open your eyes. Don't you smell it?
She spoke again, unrelenting. I focused on my sense of smell. I smelled it now. What was it? That's right. Freshly baked bread, a stew my father loved, and cactus wine. A smell that once made my stomach feel uneasy, now filled me with a joy I could barely withstand. Finally, I opened my eyes and looked up at her. She was even more beautiful than I remembered. Her long, raven hair blew loosely in the desert wind. Her narrow, dark eyes glistened in the desert sun as she looked down at me. A pale hand extended, calloused from training, yet somehow delicate in appearance. I took it.
Good. I'm glad you finally stopped lounging around all day. I know your work is done, but we still have the victory celebration to go to. We're already late.
Victory celebration?
I asked, as I dusted the sand from my plain clothes.
Yes, finally. You played such an important role in the rebellion. It would be an insult to everyone if you were to miss it. Let me brush your hair at least.
Mother,
I looked at the empty village around me.
where is everyone?
She pulled me toward her by the arm, spinning me around, and hurriedly pulling a comb through my hair.
At the celebration, I did mention we were late. Now hurry, we're going straight there.
She put the comb away and clutched my hand, pulling me along behind her.
It's out in the desert? Why not in the village?
I asked. She didn't answer. She only kept pulling me along, further and further into the desert. With every step, the sky seemed to fill with more clouds, as though a great storm were approaching.
It's just up ahead,
She said.
just around those rocks.
As we rounded the turn and up a small hill, the full sight entered my vision all at once. In that moment, it gripped me with a horror that felt so real. A crack of thunder startled me as the sky darkened once again. The air, only moments ago feeling so warm and comforting, took on a cold, damp oppressiveness. My breath caught in my chest, and my lungs halted their duty. The ground was soaked in blood and covered in the bodies of so many villagers. Nearly all were dead. A few were alive, shackled in so many chains they could barely stay upright on their knees, too weighed down to stand. PanTech soldiers, their armor speckled red, stood above them with their helmets obscuring their faces. Their rifles were drawn, ready to be fired at a moment's notice, at the slightest whim.
Do you see, Taylor? PanTech's glorious victory against the last rebellion. It's all thanks to you. You did this.
No,
I screamed, falling to my knees.
I didn't. I didn't.
Mother grabbed me by the chin, forcing me to look up at her.
Don't be so modest. Wasn't it you who fell in love with a PanTech soldier and stopped the rebels in our village? Wasn't it you who brought the Shadow Falcon to PanTech and turned a symbol of these people's freedom into a weapon of war to be used against them? None of this would have been possible if it weren't for you. Don't just look at the ground. Look above you. Ghost's final proclamation.
She pointed to a pillar not far ahead. My eyes slowly rose to the top. I became sick, and I looked away. Mother grabbed my head and forced it back toward the top of the pillar. There was Ghost, dead, pinned like a butterfly in someone's collection. I screamed, rising to my feet and running toward the pillar. Mother grabbed me.
Taylor, it's all right. It's just me. Pull yourself together.
I fought against her. I'd tear this pillar from the ground. Then I'd take one of their weapons. Somehow, I was going to kill every PanTech soldier here. But Mother's grip was so strong, her voice felt different. I could feel myself being pulled away, but I kept fighting.
I'll make them pay for this,
I shouted, gripping my hands on her shoulder, pushing her away. She moved only a little before overpowering me again.
Let me go.
Taylor, snap out of it. I've got you. I'm here.
The hands gripped me tightly again, shaking me. The clouds above me disappeared, and my senses slowly returned. I knew it was a dream. I knew, but I couldn't stop it, couldn't escape it. I looked up, finding Frelia gripping my arms.
Taylor, are you back yet? Your vitals were off the charts. I thought you were in an actual fight. If one of your friends found you like this, you might have accidentally killed them.
I grabbed her by the shirt and pulled her close to me. For a moment, I thought I might punch her with all my strength. But in that same moment, the weight of everything finally collapsed onto my shoulders. I pulled her close, buried my face into her shoulder, and sobbed loudly. I waited for her to shove me away, or hit me, or berate me. Instead, I felt her arms wrap around me and pull me closer.
I'm sorry,
Was all I could squeak out between deep breaths. She sighed.
I used to have them too, you know. The nightmares. Like you, I would wake up and cry in my room. You're the only person I've ever told. It gets better. One day, I stopped crying.
How?
I asked, after sniffing so hard it hurt my head.
One day, I think I just ran out of tears.
I smiled. Then a chuckle slipped out, surprising me as much as it did her. Within seconds, it had devolved into full-blown laughter. Frelia joined me, and the two of us laughed until our sides hurt, and we had no choice but to stop so we could breathe again. She picked her hands up off my shoulders and slammed them back down again, squeezing tightly.
I was never here, and never let me hear you apologize again.
I nodded and felt awkwardly stuck on what I should say in reply. Before I could come up with anything, she was gone, and I fell back into my pillow. It took only a few minutes for me to fall back asleep. By the time I woke up, I questioned whether any of it really had happened after all, or if it was just part of the dream. I awoke the next morning, not feeling refreshed. Better physically, at least. After grabbing a quick shower, I ran out the door, hoping to get to the lab ahead of most of the other students. I bolted out of my door the moment it opened, nearly flying straight into Linda and Joyce.
Wow, Taylor, is your room on fire or something?
Joyce teased, taking a step back to avoid a collision.
Maybe she heard us coming and was trying to avoid us. Again.
Linda said, an obvious jab about yesterday's lunch. Wow, was that really yesterday? So much happened in a single day. It felt more like weeks.
I'll tell you what. If you girls agree to help me out with something long-term, lunch is on me today, and I'll actually show up.
Joyce tapped her cheek with her index finger.
Ignoring the fact that everything is free here, what kind of absolutely insane mess have you gotten yourself into?
Yeah, and it's so bad that you're asking us to help you out of it. About once or twice a week, I agree with Joyce, and I think this is one of those times. Spill it.
Linda said, poking my shoulder with a big grin on her face.
I kind of volunteered myself to play a lead role in this animal intelligence research breakthrough we're all working on. You remember how Professor Barth was looking for someone to help him with something? Well, I went to the lab late yesterday and we made some interesting discoveries. He wants me to handle cooperation with other divisions and field work.
Ooh, how interesting. Did it involve a kiss?
Joyce said, puckering her lips.
Joyce,
I said, crossing my arms.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, Taylor. I said that even though you told us what happened in your zone. I just let that slip without thinking.
She reached out and touched my forearm, and I instinctively recoiled.
No, it's all right. I'm okay now. Just still hurts a lot sometimes, you know?
Linda frowned, but said nothing.
Wait, does this mean Linda's gonna be walking around being afraid of you since you're technically playing a senior role in the project now?
Joyce asked, eager to change the subject.
Hey, that's not nice either, Joyce. Besides, Taylor is different.
Linda said, pounding her fist into her palm.
Hear that, Taylor? You're not scary at all.
Joyce said.
I guess that's a good thing. So, does that mean both of you will help me? I need people I can trust, and you two are the only friends I have in animal research.
Hear that, Linda? In animal research. That means she's going off and making friends without us in other divisions. Our Taylor is really growing up fast.
Linda nodded.
I'm not the most skilled analyst in the program. Joyce, I can understand it, but are you sure you wouldn't rather pick someone else besides me?
I shook my head.
You have great instincts. You know the stuff better than most of us and don't even know you know it. Know what I mean?
I guess so. I knew enough to get me here, I suppose.
Joyce laughed.
I think she's just faking the muscle head thing, and she's probably the biggest genius here. Just lying low and not attracting too much attention, avoiding those higher-ups she's so afraid of.
Are you teasing me again?
Linda asked, lowering her head and biting at her cheek.
Only a little. If you're here, it's not by accident. Besides, you know I only tease you because I like you so much. Come here.
Joyce took a few steps to the side and jumped on Linda's back, nearly toppling both of them over, hugging her tightly from behind. Or maybe it was a chokehold. It was hard to tell the difference.
Joyce, who's the musclehead now? Besides, shouldn't you answer Taylor's question? We showed up here early to make Taylor eat breakfast, remember? We were going to gang up on her, not me.
Joyce released her and landed gracefully back on her feet.
Oh, that's right. And of course, Taylor, I was getting really bored here. Building relationships with other divisions sounds like my cup of tea.
And I can't wait for the field work.
Linda added, with even greater enthusiasm.
Then I guess I can't skip breakfast like I'd planned then, huh?
I asked. A rhetorical question.
No.
They both shouted at once. Chapter 9. 2 weeks later.
Look, I think it's working.
Joyce said, her voice shaking from the excitement. It was rare to see her this excited about anything, but this research had ignited a spark within her again.
The data simulations show it should reach peak adjustment today, this very hour to be exact. 1 week since we started the process on this little rat, and she's done so well.
I agreed. I was repeating the plan more for myself than anyone else. This was the first proper test of the cleaned-up process. Barth had put in countless hours, as had the rest of us. Simulations produced excellent results, but simulations can't consider all factors.
Something doesn't feel right.
Linda said, tilting her head at the rat in the cage.
What do you mean?
Joyce scolded.
Don't be so negative without good reason. If there's a problem, at least articulate it.
No, if she has a feeling, there's a problem. We should play it safe.
I said.
Let's run a few more physical tests before we start the rapid learning protocol.
Are you sure this is a good idea while Professor Barth isn't here?
Linda asked, leaning in closer to examine the rat. I nodded.
I'm positive. Also, I'd prefer not to take any chances on a first impression.
So you have your doubts too, huh? You two are such cynics.
Joyce said, shaking her head. She was teasing us, but part of her meant it. I wanted to be optimistic about everything too, but with Ghost next in line for this procedure, I just didn't want to take any chances at all. I wanted to be completely sure, with no doubts. At all. In just a few days, we'd be scanning him. Barth would pressure me to produce results quickly. I needed to prepare as much as possible ahead of that.
Safety takes priority. You know that.
I said.
Right? As you say, Assistant Professor.
Joyce said, grinning.
Could you please stop calling me that?
But you like it so much.
She said, reaching over and grabbing a handful of my cheek, giving it a gentle pull. I swatted her hand away, but I couldn't help laughing a little.
It's better than Ice Princess.
Linda said.
Oh, don't be jealous, little ice princess. You're very cute, too. Come here. Give me those cheeks.
Joyce lunged at Linda, reaching up and grabbing both her cheeks, pulling them roughly in all different directions. Linda grabbed her wrists and pulled her hands away.
Hey, you weren't nearly that rough on Taylor. You're going to make my cheeks red for hours.
That's because she's not a big, tough ice princess like you. I'm surprised you even felt that.
I sighed, waving both of my hands high in the air.
Hello? Could you two knock it off? We need to…
Before I could finish the sentence, a loud slam startled me. The three of us froze, trying to make sense of what we were seeing. The rat had run into the cage so hard it was bleeding. It backed up quickly and charged again.
Hurry! Stun it before it hurts itself!
I shouted at Linda, who was standing next to the small cylinder. Without hesitation, she grabbed it and held it up toward the cage. It emitted a barely audible sound and froze the rat in place. I ran to the cabinet, digging through vials until I found the one I was looking for. She just needed to be sedated for a while until we could figure everything out. I filled the small needle, opened the cage, and injected the rat. It slumped to the floor and was still.
You can stop now,
I said, nodding to the immobilizer in Linda's hand.
I wish we had that thing in my zone.
No kidding. There were many people I would have liked to use something like that on.
Joyce said.
What do you think happened, Taylor?
Linda asked, ignoring her comment.
I don't know. Everything was looking perfect until just now. We need to wrap it so it can't hurt itself and run some tests. Joyce, do that while I calibrate the scanner.
I picked up another cylinder, no bigger than the immobilizer sound device, and linked up to adjust the settings. I wouldn't trust the automatic detection feature this time. No room for error. Once she finished wrapping her, I held the scanner above and pressed the button on top, producing an audible click. I changed the angle and did it again. Then, one more time.
Do you think we're dealing with brain tumors?
Joyce asked.
Let's just look at the scan,
I said, dropping the cylinder into a slot near the wall. A lifelike hologram popped up from the table. I moved my hand to the side, spinning it. Holding both of my hands up and moving them further apart expanded the image. Pinching my index fingers and thumbs together moved a layer deeper. We went slowly, layer by layer, looking for anything. When we finally reached the brain, we zoomed in completely, until the image was twice the size of our own heads. Thin layer by thin layer, we slowly flipped through until we reached the very center. Nearly an hour,
Do you think we missed something?
Linda asked, wringing her hands.
I don't get it. We couldn't have.
Joyce added.
We went frame by frame, meticulously. All three of us were looking from different angles.
I sighed, leaning back against a table behind me. What if this had been Ghost? Would he have gone crazy too? I didn't know what to say,
Get a blood sample.
Linda said.
I mean, sure, but why?
Joyce asked, as she picked up a smaller cylinder with a clear window on the side and held it against the rat. A small click, and it filled with a tiny amount of blood. Barely a drop. With this technology, it was more than enough.
We should check stress levels, hormones, and things like that. I'm not convinced it went crazy. Maybe it was scared, or maybe it didn't want to be in a cage anymore. Maybe it thought we were fighting and wanted to fight too. You were a veterinarian, Taylor. You know, animals have a lot of complex thoughts already. This rat should have had the intelligence of a human child at this point in the procedure. We don't know what she was thinking. She wasn't a normal rat anymore.
I slapped both hands on my face and dragged them down.
Now I'm really glad Professor Barth wasn't here.
Hey, so you're supposed to handle cooperation with other divisions now, right? Why not take this over to the people in neuroscience? They're much better equipped to diagnose this than we are. Even though it's an animal, we're dealing with a more human-like brain now. It's something completely new. They'll eat it up.
Joyce said.
You're not wrong, but Professor Barth said involving the human medical divisions would be a bad idea.
But he didn't say you couldn't involve them, right?
Joyce said, leaning down and grabbing my shoulders, forcing me to look up and see the big grin on her face.
No, he didn't. That's true.
I conceded.
And
Joyce stood up straight and paced slowly, a habit she'd still not given up from her time as an attorney.
this is the perfect olive branch to offer those snobs. Humans have barely changed over thousands of years. So what if they like to look down on us? It must be a bore studying one species all the time that barely changes. We're giving them the excuse to do something fun for once, and with the promise of there being even more where this came from.
She has a point.
Linda said.
As much as I really, really don't want to go over there.
Fine. I hope we don't regret this. Get the rat in a portable unit. She shouldn't wake up for several hours with the dosage I gave her. That will give them plenty of time to run their own tests if we forgot something.
Linda nodded and began rummaging through a nearby cabinet, pulling out a smaller box with clear windows on each side.
One without windows, please. I'd rather not attract unwanted attention.
Right.
She said, swapping it out for another, before gently placing the rat inside and locking the top. I took several deep breaths, trying to shake the flood of stress that was filling my body. Barth had said the military division was on top because they were the president's personal favorites. They could look down on everyone. The robotics scientists and engineers over in resource gathering and processing facilities were basically recluses. I'd never even met one of them. I was told it was almost all automated now, anyway. Resources were harvested, processed, then renewed through a completely automatic process using machines and facilities that required almost no oversight. Only the allocation was handled by humans now, and the occasional change based on our needs. Thanks to them, there was no more supply and demand. We should consider them the actual heroes of PanTech. Yet somehow, the military was even more favored. And knowing that, Frelia still treated me the way she did? What was her angle anyway?
Taylor,
Linda asked, tilting her head.
are you okay?
Yes. No. I don't know. Let's just get this over with. My pass should allow us to go almost anywhere now. We don't need anyone to escort us over.
Come on, cheer up. We'll have this wrapped up by lunchtime. I bet these neuroscience people will invite us to eat with them because we're so fascinating and do such interesting work.
All you ever think about is eating.
I said, smiling.
Well, of course. Do you think these curves are going to just maintain themselves?
There was probably some truth to that. Despite her constant teasing of Linda, the two both exercised together almost religiously. Linda was obsessed with maintaining her strength as a warrior, while Joyce was more concerned with appearance. I never seemed to find the time despite them regularly inviting me. Or make the time, as they often like to correct. My constant activity kept me in decent enough condition, I suppose. Frelia's voice seemed to appear in my mind. Training. Right. Now there was someone else pushing me to regain my athleticism. It was even more important now with the implant. My muscles needed to handle additional load at a moment's notice without exploding. Frelia's muscles were really something, come to think of it.
Right. Sure, those curves are important.
I mumbled. Joyce sighed, leaning on the table next to me.
Are you sure you're going to be okay? I'm worried about you. These kinds of setbacks are normal, but it feels like you're taking this one personally.
I'm under a lot of pressure to run this procedure with Ghost. Outcomes like this out of the blue, well, they're just really scary. Ghost is more than just a rare species to me. He's like family. I just don't want to think about what might have happened if this had been him instead.
Joyce wrapped her arms around me, hugging me tightly.
Oh, honey, why didn't you tell us that? Look at it another way. It didn't happen to Ghost, right? And we're going to figure out what happened, so it doesn't happen to any other participants either.
Linda put her arms around both of us.
Group hug.
Okay, I get it. See? Look, I'm smiling.
I said, forcing the biggest fake smile I could manage.
Wow. Don't hurt yourself.
Joyce said.
Let's get going. We're aiming to get this done before lunch after all, right?
I said, standing upright.
Let's go make some new friends.
Joyce said, pumping her fist into the air. New friends. I had my doubts. Chapter 10. The College of Neuroscience was only seconds away on the faculty rapid transit pod, but it may as well have been on the moon. After stepping off, once I took a moment to reorient myself, the differences were apparent. The three of us stood speechless. It was as though we'd been living in a scaled-down version of the real thing. Everything was just bigger, in every sense of the word. They still made the walls and floors of the same glossy white synthetic material that could be found all over PanTech, but all areas of the surface, from the floor to the ceiling, were polished regularly. That theory was confirmed when a small machine stopped in front of us. It was just a few feet tall and shaped like a puck. A small compartment opened and extended toward me.
Welcome. I will clean your shoes. Please respect all guidelines while visiting the College of Neuroscience. Please wait for a visitation supervisor before continuing. One will be alerted, assigned, and shall arrive shortly. Enjoy your visit to the prestigious College of Neuroscience.
Hey, why don't we get a robot greeter?
Joyce said, far too loudly, while bending over and examining the machine. I simply shrugged. I was glad. These things really creeped me out. In fact, I was only surprised to see it here, because I'd heard the president really didn't like having them on campus due to, unsurprisingly, mysterious past events. Probably linked to the rebellion. The people in neuroscience must really be able to pull some strings to have this much mechanical assistance.
What's even worse is we barely have any animals over in animal research.
Linda said. Good point. I had given little thought, but most of us were animal lovers, and pets were rare. Aside from me, I wasn't aware of anyone else having an animal with them. Briefly, I had an idea about purposing our current research to allow animal research employees to have an intelligent animal companion. Maybe that would keep it out of the military's hands. Then again, the obvious hurdle would be the distinct lack of glory and recognition. Unless the president himself wanted one, he'd likely have no interest whatsoever.
Guess I never thought of that.
I conceded.
I have Ghost.
Ghost is so cool, too.
Joyce said.
I should go to your zone when we start field research and get one for myself. How long do you think it would take me to capture one?
I considered the question honestly, crossing my arms and tapping my elbow. That would be quite the task, but surely there were more somewhere. Ghost didn't just spontaneously pop into existence.
I don't know. Using all of our current technology? 100 years, maybe? You know I named him Ghost for a reason, right? They don't exist.
Linda shook her head and raised her hand in protest.
Oh, I beg to differ.
Joyce narrowed her eyes.
Seriously.
Seriously,
Linda said, her expression still stoic.
one time I.
Seriously, is right. The notification said you three are from Animal Research. Are you lost?
A tall, blonde woman, only a few years older than us, approached, stomping her heels loudly. Who even wore heels anymore? I'd heard they were an odd fashion choice, abandoned centuries ago. Highly impractical, I might add. How did anyone get anything done in those? Her shirt was at least one size too small, and her skirt was uncomfortably short. Not uncomfortable for her, probably, but definitely for me. How could she even sit wearing that?
We're.
What was the best way to phrase this without sounding stupid? Guess I should have thought about that on the ride over, all 3 seconds of it, she said, mimicking my voice.
Are you three of the animals, perhaps, disguised as humans? Why are you staring at me like that? If you want to study me that badly, you should check in with the anatomy people. We deal with brains over here, and it appears yours aren't in good working order.
Oh, now I was definitely interested in her anatomy. I wanted to rearrange her face with my fists.
Listen.
My boiling blood sent my mouth wide open, ready to have it out right here, just a few steps out of the transportation pod. Joyce, thankfully, was quick to step in front of me and interrupt.
My apologies. We were just taking in the sights here, and it's disorienting for us. I'm not sure if you visited Animal Research, but our facilities are more different from what you might think. We actually have an interesting challenge. We thought our counterparts at Neuroscience would be much better trained and equipped to analyze and explain. Thank you for taking the time to meet with us.
The woman pulled down her thick-framed glasses, eyeing Joyce with a grin.
Oh, so one of you possesses something resembling what could be called manners. More clumsy flattery, perhaps, but better than staring at me and saying nothing. I can give you 15 minutes with one of the assistant professors to make your case. I do like flattery, after all.
You don't say.
Linda mumbled. I elbowed her before taking a step forward to be alongside Joyce.
Thank you. We understand how important the work is here, so 15 minutes is more than generous. Do we need to schedule an appointment?
I asked, trying to cool my temper. This woman had spent at least a few years working in neuroscience. It was just as likely she was having fun with us, trying to goad a reaction to test our professionalism. Giving her one would have been a poor choice. Thank goodness for Joyce. That rhetoric skill set came in handy after all, and this probably won't be the last time it does.
I thought you said this was important and interesting. Of course, you don't need to make an appointment. I just hope you don't mind waiting.
She spun on her heels and stepped with an exaggerated bounce in the opposite direction. We followed closely, trying to ignore the stares from everyone we passed, going through the multiple corridors, twists and turns. We'd need a map to navigate this place. There's no way we could find our way back out of here again without one. Nothing like the military facilities that I barely saw even a glimpse of, but much bigger than animal research. Eventually, we arrived at a small room with bench-style seats lining the walls. She pointed inside.
Have a seat in there. An assistant professor will be here to see you once they have time to spare. Minutes, hours, days, I don't know. Whenever one of them has nothing better to do.
It's nice to see the manners go both ways. Are those glasses even real?
Linda blurted. The woman pulled those glasses down her nose again, raising an eyebrow at the comment.
Except for you, you're coming with me. You can catch up to your friends later.
Stunned, Linda looked at me. Her eyes pleaded for help. It was almost as obvious as the horrible grin spreading across Joyce's face, taking an almost frightening amount of humor from the turn of events. If I didn't know these two as well as I did, I'd think they were bitter rivals, not great close friends. Arguing with her at this point would be a bad idea. It's not like she was going to hurt Linda, as any forms of clear bullying weren't allowed. She was probably going to be embarrassed a little, then meet back with us later. If she could tolerate Joyce's relentless teasing, surely this woman would be nothing. Maybe they'd become friends.
It's all right. The two of us are familiar enough with the issue we're facing. You can borrow Linda for a bit.
Delightful.
The woman exclaimed.
I wasn't asking permission, of course. Good luck to the two of you.
She stepped alongside Linda and motioned for her to follow. With the two of them so close together, our eccentric tour guide stood several inches taller than Linda. That was impressive, even with heels. Linda was nearly 6 feet tall. Joyce and I stepped into the room and waited. Then waited more. And more. Before we knew it, 2 hours had passed. There weren't even any other people in the room with us. Just a big, blank space that seemed to get smaller as the time went on. No music, no snacks. Just a small information unit that contained those foretold guidelines the robot warned us about, sitting on a small table in the center of the room. I read them. 6 times. Super obvious. Extremely boring. Joyce had the right idea and had been napping for at least the last half hour. I didn't want to risk someone walking in to see us, finding us asleep, then just walking out. About 10 more minutes passed before a bearded man abruptly opened the door, causing us both to jump in our seats.
I'm supposed to see two from animal studies. I assume that's you two?
Yes, that's us.
I said, giving Joyce the chance to rub her eyes and adjust back to the waking world. He walked over to the table and held his hand on top of the information unit.
Let's see what you have. You can explain as you show it to me. I'm very busy, as I assume is the case for you, so let's be efficient with our time, please.
Right to the point. Still rude, but I could work with this. Joyce and I took turns explaining the situation, our research, and the roadblock we were facing. We tried to stick to facts only. Several times Joyce tried to elaborate further, and both times he waved his hand and dismissed her with a huff, reminding us to stick to what was relevant. A real charming man, this one. Still liked him better than the woman,
Unexpected.
he said, with no hint of the meaning in his voice.
How so?
I asked. He eyed the small box we were carrying for a moment.
Is it in there?
It is.
I said, still trying to read him with no success.
Unexpected? It was supposed to be important and interesting, and to my surprise, it was perhaps both things. Amazing, coming from a waste of space like animal research.
My mouth was quick to fly open, instinctively, but Joyce was a step ahead of me, shaking her head with a silent warning to hold back again.
We appreciate the compliment, Assistant Professor.
I said, in a likely very unconvincing, cheerful voice. He tapped something on his wrist.
Down the hall to the room at the very end, straight ahead. Take a right when you exit the room. Please be respectful of Professor Elise's time. Despite how she behaves, her time is precious. She's been alerted, so just walk right in. Good day.
Without waiting for our reply, he rushed out the door. Joyce shrugged, and we followed his directions down the hallway. When we arrived, I took several deep breaths in front of the door.
It'll be all right.
Joyce said, putting a hand on my shoulder.
You're doing fine. Just keep that temper in check. Everyone around here seems to enjoy testing you, so you should expect it.
Thanks, Joyce. Here goes.
I said, giving the door a push. Was this the wrong place? 2 familiar faces sat across a table, teacups in their hands, both laughing as we opened the door.
Lalinda?
I asked as my jaw dropped, nearly choking on the name. Chapter 11.
Oh, hey Taylor. Hey Joyce.
Linda said, no hint of surprise in her voice.
So, they sent you to me after all? That's surprising. Not a lot gets through these days.
Said our tall blonde tour guide, sitting in the chair across from Linda.
So that means... But wait a minute.
I said, looking at Joyce, who only shrugged.
I'll help you with your stumbling thought process since we don't have all day. Yes, I'm Professor Elise. Yes, it turns out that the way a person looks and dresses has no bearing on their intellect, unless you want to avoid being a distraction. I don't, I only care about what I want.
Elise said, rattling the words off as though she were speed reading it off a script. She'd probably repeated it pretty often to new arrivals. I was seeing the purpose of the group meetings to assimilate us into PanTech culture.
But you're so young.
Joyce blurted.
I'm 47. In 1 month, I'll have been the head of neuroscience for 20 years.
You're what?
Joyce's jaw dropped again, wide-eyed as she approached the professor, examining her like a statue.
How is this possible?
Age was impossible to gauge here. I knew it was a possibility the moment I saw her, but that was true for everyone we met here. Someone who looked 60 might be well over 100.
I invest heavily in my appearance. Other divisions always need my help, and I get to partake in innovative research. Most of how we perceive age depends on the appearance of our skin. Professor Dari over in biology is studying a procedure that recalibrates the regeneration rate to compensate for aging. Oh, and my hair. I assume most of your adversity zones would require dye to change the color of your hair. Mine grows this shade of blonde. I invited your friend here to take a sample of her hair because I adore her shade. I may change to that next time. A slight alteration to that genetic attribute, and your hair can grow a different color.
Wow. For someone so busy and short on time, she sure loves talking about herself. It was like talking to the female version of Barth in a way. Come to think of it, I bet they're all like that. Self-absorbed, apathetic, and vain. You'd have to be, knowing what the rest of humanity is going through at the hands of your organization. Even when you went through it yourself. How does everyone forget so easily?
So, what made you study neuroscience instead of biology?
I asked.
Isn't that obvious? Understanding the mind is above all other knowledge. Changing something about your appearance would be completely random if you didn't understand how it would be perceived by others. Far deeper, how that perception is influenced by the mechanics and composition of our brain itself. What might be a lucky guess for someone like the three of you is a calculated prediction for me, especially if I've seen a scan of your brain, which I could easily look up. You caught me a bit by surprise today, so this is fun. I can't predict your thoughts and reactions the way I might normally.
How comforting.
I said, trying not to let the chill that went down my spine take physical form.
Why is that comforting? Something you wouldn't want me seeing?
She asked, motioning to one of 2 empty teacups next to the pot on the table.
Tea?
No. She was worse than Barth. Didn't expect us? Then why were 2 empty teacups already sitting on the table? The table had 4 chairs. Not only had she expected we'd end up here and had time to prepare, but she made the most subtle of gestures at just the right moment to make me realize it. And the smile forming on her lips just proves it.
Yes, please.
I said, pulling out a chair, prompting Joyce to do the same. If she was going to be this perceptive, then maybe I should try behaving differently, unpredictably.
She's reading me so well, I should do unexpected things to throw her off. Would that work?
She smiled again, but it wasn't a devious smile. I wasn't sure what it was.
Does that sum it up pretty well, Taylor?
There was no point in lying.
Yes, actually, but why make that point?
Linda and Joyce looked completely lost on what was happening.
Because that's not the question you should ask yourself. The question you should ask yourself is, why am I thinking that way? You're a competitive one, Taylor. You don't like to lose at anything. But you should remember that everyone was a big fish in a small pond before coming to PanTech. Here, you're in the ocean. All the small fish are gone. The biggest adjustment is realizing you're now the small fish.
Sharks.
I said. I shouldn't have said that. That was such a stupid thing to say. Way to go, Taylor. Tell this perceptive woman exactly the way you see PanTech,
Interesting.
she said, taking a sip of her tea.
Speaking of interesting,
Joyce blurted. Thank you, Joyce.
would you like to see our little research project?
Elise winked at me, then turned to Joyce.
That's why you're here after all.
She grabbed a small device off her desk, within arm's reach, and placed it at the center of the table after sliding the teapot out of the way.
Let's see it.
We spent the next several minutes explaining the research to her and the issue we'd run into, about how the rat went crazy and started slamming itself into the cage. We showed her all the scans, data from the blood samples. She even examined the rat, still sedated, taking a brain scan of her own from a tiny device she had in her shirt pocket, taking another blood sample as well.
Silly girls, your experiment didn't fail at all. This is amazing, truly. A remarkable new way of applying the field of neuroscience outside the human species. Look, see how these markers are elevated in the blood and brain scan you took, but are different on the fresh scan and sample I just took.
I scratched my head, trying to follow.
So, you're telling us she didn't suddenly go crazy and start bashing herself against the cage as a side effect of the procedure she'd undergone?
Professor Elise sighed.
Please pay attention. That's not what I said. All I said was that the experiment was a success. You could call this a side effect, just not what you're thinking. The rat didn't suddenly go berserk out of nowhere. Based on your sample, I can see the marker surged. Based on the timeline you gave me, these stress levels didn't rise until after it had slammed itself against the cage, about the time you used the equipment in your lab to immobilize, then sedate it.
Linda slammed both hands down on the table, smiling.
It was trying to trick us into opening the cage so it could escape.
Elise pointed to Linda with a big grin of her own, leaning back in her chair.
Someone is paying attention. That's exactly what I'm saying. You're the animal experts. I'm sure you can come up with a reason a rat was not the best of choices for this experimental procedure. Or do I need to explain that to you as well?
I sighed, rubbing my face with my hands. It should have been obvious.
Rats are already crafty tricksters and natural problem solvers. This one wasn't domesticated as a pet. It didn't trust us. It saw us as giants imprisoning it. They don't like being stuck out in the open either. Wow.
We should use a dog.
Joyce said. Elise nodded in agreement.
You haven't seen a dog in person yet, have you, Taylor? You said they weren't in your zone.
Linda said.
I actually expected to see lots of new animals when I arrived at Animal Research.
Elise nodded. No doubt another thing she's had to explain many times.
PanTech's use of simulations virtually eliminates the need for actual subjects until the final stage of the experiment, if then. Most of the time, they're never needed at all. There are plenty of volunteers in all the divisions for human research because of the level of safety, but your division is a special case. However, I would suggest it's necessary. As for why pets aren't more common, that should be obvious to you.
Why would that be obvious?
I asked. It certainly wasn't obvious to me.
When you arrived here, didn't you see all the cleaning and maintenance machines rolling around? If you were considered a higher level division, you'd have them. Being a lower level division, you're expected to operate in minimal space and with minimal resources. Our living quarters here are much larger than yours as well.
Wonderful.
Linda said, sipping her tea.
Is Animal Research really considered a lower level division? I didn't know that.
I said, confused why I didn't know already. I'd been here for months. Shouldn't it have come up at some point?
Are you kidding, Barth? Admit to being the head of a lower level division. Ha, that'll be the day.
Elise giggled almost as much as she spoke. I guessed she and Barth had a history somehow, but the last thing I wanted to do was get into that.
I take it you'd like to be involved,
I said, hoping to steer the conversation back to the topic at hand. I could feel another monologue coming. If she thought she was very much different from Barth, she was kidding herself.
Oh, yes, I'd like to observe this experiment for my own purposes. Someone should socialize this dog with humans both before and throughout the procedure. You should show them educational imagery as the process takes place. No surprises, no cages. One of you can care for it and watch it around the clock. Beagles were often used a long time ago for experiments because of their calm, trusting natures. One of them would probably be a good choice.
Linda raised her hand, looking at me with her eyes practically sparkling.
I'll do it. I cared for my clan's animals in my zone and trained them. That included dogs.
If it's a beagle, his name's gonna be Henry.
Joyce blurted, drawing everyone's attention.
Henry?
I asked.
What if the one we get is a female?
Henrietta, then.
You'll need to petition the adversity management to bring one back for you.
Elise said. I forgot about the fact they only used military jargon within the division. Others referred to them as adversity management, unless they didn't like them, like Barth. Commanders were adversity managers, adversity management specialists, something like that. I hated the corporate lingo that was used here,
I know a couple of people there, so it shouldn't be a problem.
I said. That was close. I nearly said I had a friend there but caught myself. I hadn't yet decided if Frelia was a friend and didn't want to get caught calling her one.
But Barth really won't enjoy asking the militaire, adversity management for something like this.
Oh, he will, when he finds out the president and other professors will be there for the unveiling of your first successful subject to be shown to other divisions. Barth loves that kind of thing. He's been wanting to meet the president since he became a professor. Poor guy. We'll make his dream come true, and he'll do whatever you ask. Trust me, once you've secured your subject, plan for 1 month of preparation. If we can achieve a small amount of speech, it will really wow the crowd.
Do you really think speech is possible?
Joyce asked, looking concerned.
I mean, that's a little creepy. Talking animals?
Don't get cold feet now, Joyce.
I said, refilling everyone's teacup.
Professor Elise, thank you for your help. I hope this is the beginning of a long and prosperous partnership.
She smiled, holding out her teacup for everyone else to touch with theirs. And with that, we'd sealed the deal with neuroscience. I just hoped it wasn't a huge mistake that would come back to haunt me. Chapter 12. The next month went by like a blur. I went to see Frelia, who sent out the request to another commander to bring back a beagle when they returned to headquarters. Just a couple of days later, the creature arrived. It wasn't long before I realized why so many of the others talked about dogs so much. He was adorable. We took him out to play during the day, and Linda kept him during the nights. Professor Barth and I formulated the injection he received with some input from Professor Elise, who was now a frequent visitor. Much to Barth's irritation. Part of me thought, with a woman as alluring as Elise coming to see him, he might welcome her presence with enthusiasm. Not at all the case. Privately, he voiced his concern that she would likely try to steal some of the credit for the research. The brain density concept was something Elise had come up with herself many years before, for use on human subjects, but the president denied the proposal. Knowing that, didn't she deserve part of the credit? That's not the way Barth saw things. In his mind, his position was already prestigious enough. He wanted all the credit. However, like Elise had predicted, the party she planned to throw him was enough to convince him to tolerate her presence, especially when she mentioned it would include the attendance of other professors and the president himself. When I had time, I went to train with Frelia at Adversity Management. It turned out to be more structured and focused than I expected from her. Then again, I was long overdue to change many of the impressions I had of the woman. She wasn't rash or foolish, at least, not to the degree she pretended to be. It was a persona she'd created, an appearance for others. Partly, anyway. If the simulation I'd seen giving me a glimpse of her past was any sign, she'd had a very traumatic history. Still, sometimes I'd catch her smiling or laughing when she thought I wasn't looking, when I couldn't quite pick up the object I was trying to lift or make the jump I was trying to make, and I would get frustrated. Little by little, thanks to her, I was becoming familiar with the real-world applications of this implant. Henry, the beagle, evolved quickly. His understanding of words and gestures was easily on the level of a human child within the first couple of weeks. He knew all our names, the names of his toys. By the third week, things got a little stranger. He started practicing walking upright for longer and longer distances. A few days after that, he began pawing at Linda's clean uniforms and whining. When we had a few sized for him, he was thrilled and struggled to get them on himself. Just before they'd arrived, he learned to use the human toilet. Linda was clearly the right person for this job. It even impressed Elise, who urged us to be accepting of Henry's explorations, like the one with human clothes. She urged us to see him as he sees himself, which was transforming. Barth was, of course, overjoyed about the clothing and upright walking. He took Henry himself to be fit with for a fancy suit to wear at the party. He liked the optics. Many times he reminded Henry that the party was in his honor, and everyone couldn't wait to see him. By the third week, speech experts were spending several hours a day with Henry and Linda, helping him create sounds that are more difficult for a dog to make. Progress came quickly, but he sounded hilarious when he spoke. His tone could barely change because of his limited anatomy for speech. Barth and I made notes on the changes we'd have to make for the next subjects. More human-like anatomy for speech, and slight altering of the pause to make it easier to grasp objects or use tools. These changes would be easier in earlier development, preferably while still in the womb. Nearing the end of the third week, Henry's speech, comical as it was more or less understandable. It needed continued work over the coming months, but he was ready for his big debut. Barth was especially polite to Elise in the final days, asking her to help upgrade their venue to accommodate employees as well. He was pleased with the results, so happy he was beside himself. Our party and reveal would take place in a giant concert hall, almost as big as Barth's ego, but not quite. I sent Joyce to oversee decorations, which I was told she was quite good at. Told by her, many times. Linda had gone from rowdy warrior woman to concerned parent in a matter of weeks. Despite the rest of us reassuring her, she worried we were pushing him too hard and that he might be feeling too much pressure. Henry was almost as excited as Barth about the party. He strutted down the halls like he was a professor and was treated like one. Everyone stopped to say hello when they passed him. Everyone on their way to lunch invited him along, which he almost always happily accepted. In fact, he'd accepted those invitations so often that his suit had to be resized at the last minute to accommodate his growing waistline. Beagles have an insatiable appetite, something we'd failed to plan for, though there'd be plenty of time to teach him about diet and exercise later. Barth called us all of animal research together on the night before, giving everyone instructions on when to cheer, when to gasp, when to say, "Aw," and more based on his subtle hand signals. After that, we were all dismissed for one final good night of sleep before the big event. The day had finally arrived. Professor Barth ushered all the guests in, one after another, as they showed up at the door. Some even had dates. It would have made sense for me to stay up front with him to meet everyone coming in, since that was part of my role now. But being backstage with Henry was a higher priority. To me, at least, not for Barth.
Do you think everyone will like me?
Henry asked, pawing at Linda.
Well, you are the whole reason for this party.
She said, patting him on the head.
I think everyone will like me.
He said, practicing his best smile, tongue hanging out. After a quiet moment, he asked another question.
What will happen to me after this?
Well, everyone might not be as excited as they are right now.
I said, trying to handle the question delicately.
But you're a part of animal research now. You'll continue to receive your lessons. I'll keep visiting you. Maybe you can have a place to stay on your own. Would you like that?
I want to stay with Linda. I love Linda. She's nice. She is my friend.
Linda snatched him up, giving him a big hug.
Of course you can stay with me. You can be my personal assistant. How about that?
I will help,
Henry said, bobbing his head up and down, causing his ears to flop.
You're a good boy, Henry,
I said, patting him on the head.
I'm a good boy,
He repeated. Despite the difference in intelligence, so much of his inherent behaviors as a dog remained. Elise had asked to keep the rat for observation, and we'd agreed, but she hadn't spoken about her much since, only to say she was doing fine, and we shouldn't worry.
I think we should go over some nutrition basics with you, Henry, and maybe take you with us for some exercise,
Joyce said, poking him in the gut. Henry wagged his tail.
The food is too good. That is the problem. Too good and too many kinds. I want them all.
We all laughed. I'd never heard anyone refer to the food here as good before, but Henry certainly meant it. One of our coworkers stepped behind the curtain.
Taylor, you're next. Then Linda and Joyce will bring Henry out after a brief announcement.
I nodded, then looked back at Henry.
Good luck, Henry. I know you'll do great in your interview.
You will do great too, Taylor. You're a good girl.
I put my hand over my mouth, fighting back a giggle. I didn't think anyone called me a good girl since my father when I was little. The thought made me miss him terribly. We'd always been so close, and I knew how much he hated PanTech. He was one of the few who seemed to hate them more than me. With Ferris and I both gone now, was Father lonely? No. He probably sat outside and smoked his pipe for hours now, reading his favorite books. Maybe he'd even started writing one by now. And he still had Mother. I had to admit to myself, with Frelia as their zone manager, I worried less than I would have otherwise. The giant snake was a decision the general himself had made, one she'd opposed. She'd warned me about the general, while she seemed to speak highly of him in some regards. She said he was one of the last true warriors. He'd accepted the implant as Frelia had. No simulation or process in place to aid it, and survived. I didn't have the full process, but I had Frelia's guidance and the simulation. Frelia said it was close enough. But was it? Why had she warned me to avoid the general if he was such a great man?
Taylor, you look sad. You don't want to be a good girl.
Henry asked, tilting his head.
Sorry, Henry. I'm just a little overwhelmed by my turn coming up, and I have a lot on my mind. I'm okay with being a good girl. Sometimes,
I said, smiling at him.
You're always a good girl, Taylor. You will do great.
Ah, Taylor, you are such a good girl. I love you so much.
Joyce said, bouncing up behind me and hugging me.
Kisses, kisses, kisses.
Linda said, taking advantage of Joyce holding me still and kissing me several times on the top of my head.
Yay! I will hug Taylor too.
Henry said, hugging my leg. I felt my cheeks get hot from the embarrassment, and they were going to call me out at any moment. I fought the urge to use the implant's help to break free.
And now I'd like to call out one more individual before the main event, if you'd all be so patient. Taylor, please come on out.
Barth shouted in his best announcer voice. I stepped out from behind the curtain, and the lights nearly blinded me. It was my first time being on stage. I'd gotten used to them during our rehearsal, but walking into them suddenly made me freeze for a moment to give myself time to adjust.
Oh, don't be shy. Come on out.
Barth said, grabbing my arm and pulling me along. I could make out some faces in the front, but not where the higher-ups were sitting, on an upper balcony in the center.
Thank you for the warm welcome, Professor,
I said, putting on my fake smile.
Sorry to pull you away from your work. I know you were getting Henry ready, but I wanted to announce that I've made your position official and expect you to continue representing animal research regarding the other divisions. Doing this on stage lets everyone see your face and recognize you when you visit the places you haven't been to yet. What do you say, Assistant Professor Taylor?
He asked, putting his arm around my shoulder. What could I say? It was a rhetorical question, but I would have accepted even if it wasn't. Freedom of movement was exactly the thing I needed.
Thank you so much, Professor. I'm honored. I've learned so much from you, and your amazing ideas have inspired me. Obviously, I'm so excited, and I can't wait.
Even as I spoke the words, I felt like another person. Thankfully, I'd listened to Mother when she instructed me. I knew how to look pretty, to flatter, and how to sound gracious when I needed to, when it would get me what I wanted. I could see a man standing in the very center, at the top. As my eyes finally adjusted, I could see him clearly. His blue eyes were visible, even at this distance, and his jet-black hair was slicked back neatly. His beard was thick, but meticulously combed and trimmed. The man himself was a giant. Despite being a little shorter than Barth, he was incredibly muscled. It would take 2 Barths standing side by side to match his width. One of his biceps was the size of my head. Slowly, he clapped, his eyes locked with mine. His expression never brightened. I could feel an intense fear bubbling up within me, and I didn't understand why. My legs felt weak, and I worried they might tremble. Was it his size? No, not that. He wasn't even in a power suit after all, and I'd been face to face with aggressive soldiers wearing them, with guns. Ludo, the rebel leader I'd fought in hand-to-hand combat, despite being much stronger than me, didn't make me feel this way. Everyone in the area below turned to look at him instead of me. Immediately, they all stood with him, clapping wildly. It was only a small thing, but I took notice of it. Everyone respected this man. I'd been so focused on him, I hadn't noticed the ancient man standing beside him, resting both hands on his cane. That must have been the president. But no, I still couldn't look away. If this man was standing next to the president, I knew who he was.
Thank you, Taylor.
Barth said.
You can go back and help Henry prepare to come out in just a moment.
He said it without the amplification, still plenty loud enough for me to hear, but my eyes remained locked with the man on the balcony. I was determined to hold eye contact. He wouldn't intimidate me. I wouldn't look away.
Taylor, didn't you hear me? Get off the stage,
Barth said, pulling me by the arm. The man with the black beard stopped clapping, and as he sat, I saw the hint of a smile. I smiled back. So, this was the great General Marcus. If you're enjoying F. Lockhaven's audio content, please like and subscribe. It's the best way to help out the channel.